Hi everyone, this is Andrew Prima, a Ukrainian American reporting from Kiev. In today's podcast, week 70 of war in Ukraine, and this is the last week of June 2023. In today's podcast, we're going to speak about American Patriot system destroy the whole Russian combat group, Ukraine armed forces moving slowly but working to exhaust the enemy, and possible terrorist act at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Ukraine Air Forces stated that defeat of Russian aviation in the sky of the Bryansk region of the Russian Federation on May 13th was carried out by missile of Patriot system. The Air Force showed a video in which it was noted that in the sky over the Bryansk region, the Patriot anti aircraft missile system of the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed two combat aircraft, three helicopters, and a drone of the Russian armed forces. So, what's interesting about this operation? For the first time, air targets were attacked deep above the territory of the Russian Federation, which was up to 80 kilometers from the state border. For the first time, the entire Russian combat group was destroyed by anticipatory actions, which didn't even have time to approach the object of the attack. The enemy suffered high losses. The Patriot system, which is a priority target for Russian intelligence actions near the border, where the enemy has a significant advantage in the air, or possibly only suddenly from an ambush. This is the maximum risk the Ukraine took. A quick, covert exit to a firing position and a quick departure of the Patriot as a higher level of quality of management and action of the personnel of the battery. Radio electronic intelligence and air defense management showed their high professionalism in this operation. It was possible to turn on the Patriot fire control radar only at the last moment and only for a guaranteed defeat, that is, by organizing observation by other means. Otherwise, Russian intelligence will determine the position of the Patriot radar and notify aircraft or helicopter which is in the current area and adjust missile strike in the area of the precise location of the radar. Therefore, only at the most necessary moment did the Patriot turn on the system and instantly worked out all the available targets. This is the most effective attack by Patriot battery since the creation of this anti-aircraft, anti-aircraft missile system. This is the most successful ambush on Russian aircraft since 1970, when during the ambush during Operation Raymond 20, Israeli aircraft destroyed four Soviet fighter jets at once. What has the enemy admitted, and what the Russian General Surovkin afraid to admit? According to the Russian media, on May 13th, a Russian strike group flying to bombard Ukraine villages was shot down. That group consists of one Su 34 strike bomber with guided bombs, one Su 35S fighter jet with anti radar missiles, and air to air missiles to cover the strike, and two Mi 8 military helicopters for electronic warfare and suspension of Ukraine air defense system, and one unmanned drone Orlan. The Russians wrote that all 11 crew members were killed. It is interesting that Patriot operations of the armed forces of Ukraine made a request to destroy not two, but three Russian helicopters that day. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation didn't officially recognize the fact of the attack by the armed forces of Ukraine and the type of weapons that were used, although it is impossible to deny the destruction of the equipment. There have already been burials of the pilots and videos on the internet. From the nature of this hit on the target, the long distance from the border, and the explosion of a powerful warhead that killed all 11 crew members, it's obvious that it was a long range missile strike. However, such recognition would essentially be a resounding failure of the commander of the Russian airspace forces. Not to notice the deployment near the border of such a system as Patriot to allow its aircraft to approach the target at significant altitudes, where they were actually visible on the radar. All these are grounds for a high profile case. So Russian General Surovkin, with the support of head of Wagner Group Prigozhin, tried to present himself at the moment as the best replacement for the head of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Russian Federation Gerasimov. And the Ukrainians have shown that they know how to identify and punish the shortcomings of Russian air terrorists. So let's go over the updates from the front lines. How the counterattack unfolds. During the past week, the defense forces of Ukraine freed another 10 square kilometers from the Russian occupiers in the east and 28 square kilometers in the south, officially reported government official Deputy Minister of Defense Hanna Malyar. Both offensive and defensive operations continue in the east. The Ukrainian military is moving in the direction of Bakhmut. The Russians are continuing the offensive in Limansky, Avdiivsky, and Mariinsky. In the south, the Ukrainian defense forces continue the operation in the Melitopol and Berdyansk directions. Fighters advance in the direction of several villages. Ukrainians making progress, slow but constant progress on a daily basis. Battles around the Antonivsky Bridge in the Kherson region shows that occupiers are trying to return their positions around this bridge and bridge over the Dnipro River near Kherson. But the armed forces of Ukraine push them back and keep holding those positions. We're clear the enemy positions, and the enemy with amazing stubbornness turns on them and tries to turn around again because they need to carry out their order and simulate at least some violent activity that they cannot demonstrate. The occupiers, against the background of the offensive of Ukrainian armed forces in Zaporizhia region, began to transfer their units there from the Kherson region, and those who remained on the left bank of the Dnipro River, fearing active actions of the Ukrainian armed forces that hit recently Antonovsky Bridge with a rocket. It seems that Ukrainian forces have started advancing across the river anyway. Representatives of the Russian Ministry of Defense said that they repelled these attacks. Even some of the enemy warriors didn't confirm this information. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, our troops have now created a small bridgehead on the left bank of the Dnipro River in around the Antonivsky Bridge. He added that the Russians are very nervous because the information of more powerful bridgehead creates the prerequisites for the prospective forcing of the Dnipro River. Ukrainian forces in the Tare direction continue to move forward as well. Over the last day, almost 3 companies of Russian troops were liquidated, said Alexander Tarnavsky, the commander of the operational and strategic grouping on Tavria troops. Crimea situation. Ukraine without Crimea will not Ukraine without Crimea will not be a victory for Kiev in the war with Russia, said President Volodymyr Zelensky in the interview with CNN. The president noted that although Ukraine's main efforts are currently aimed at returning territories on the south and the east of Ukraine, the ultimate goal is to liberate Crimea from Russian occupation, as well as return to internationally recognized borders of 1991. As you know, the Crimea was occupied by the Russian forces since 2014. So, last week, Russia's committed another crime. Russia attacked a Sumy city as a result of morning attack of the Russian Federation by Shahid kamikaze drones on the center of Sumy. The administrative building and two multi-apartment residential buildings were damaged. The city center was targeted with four Shahid drone strikes, resulting in damage to the administrative building and two multi apartment residential buildings. The State Service for Emergency Situation reported significant destruction caused by the Russian attack. Zelensky highlighted the insufficient number of high quality air defense systems to fully protect the entire territory of Ukraine and neutralize all the enemy targets. The enemy is taking advantage of this by inflicting another terrorist attack on the Sumy, in particular on residential buildings, as well as an SBU building, the president told. He urged the need to exhaust all the avenues, even those that seem impossible, to establish the strongest possible air defense system in Ukraine. So Alexander Lusenko, the mayor of city Sumy, reported the number of fatalities resulting from the Russian attack on a residential high-rise building has risen to three, while 21 individuals were wounded, of which four individuals remain hospitalized. Ukraine drone army did achieve some progress last week. The Ukraine drone army destroyed 75 units of enemy equipment during the last week. Strike military units whose work is provided by the drone army destroyed all of them the last week, including 9 tanks, said the Minister of Digital Transformation Fedorov. According to Fedorov, from June 26th to July 3rd, the drone army destruction included 9 enemy tanks, 27 armored fighting vehicles, 4 self-propelled guns, and 2 MLRS long-range systems, rocket systems. For more than 11 months since the drone army formation, 3,900 UAV drone systems were purchased with the funds from the United 24 Fund. The sum of concluded contracts was more than $4 billion. Training centers for operators have already taught 10,000 soldiers to operate the military drones. So, seems like Putin can be brought to justice. The tribunal for Putin is becoming more and more real. The International Center for the Investigation of the Crime of Aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine has started work in Hague. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced this recently, gathering evidence and documenting Russia's crime so that the guilty can be brought to justice. The first step is to go to the tribunal for the crime of aggression, she said. So, Zaporizhia nuclear power plant situation is very fragile. Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces Valery Zaluzhny and Chief of the General Staff Serhiy Shapala visited the Rivne nuclear power plant. They were joined there by some other government officials and president of Energoatom and director of the Rivne nuclear power plant. They worked out the issue of information exchange between the military and the energy industry. This is necessary to analyze, plan, and forecast possible scenarios of the development of events on Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which under Russian occupation. Latest evacuations of Russians from Zaporizhia shows that Russian forces trying to leave. Some collaborators left Energodar city, who were employees of Zaporizhia nuclear power plant on the Russian side, as well as some Rosatom, the Russian new nuclear energy company personnel who were brought to the station from the Russian Federation. Regarding the employees of the nuclear plant, there is indeed information that some of the collaborators who signed contracts with the Russian company held management positions, and trying to leave the city in a very fast manner. Also, part of Rosatom personnel that was brought from Russia, which are consists of 100 specialists, left the city at the end of the previous week. The armed forces of Ukraine have officially given notification of Russia's possible preparation of provocation in the coming days on the territory of Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which has been occupied since 2022. According to operational data, on July 4th, invaders placed unknown objects similar in appearance to explosive devices on the external roof of the third and fourth power units of the nuclear power plant. As noted by the Ukraine armed forces, the detonation of such devices should not damage the power units but may create a picture of shelling from the side of Ukraine. The Russian media channels have already started making announcements of the deliberate shelling of the power plant by Ukrainian forces. By the way, the same tactics and propaganda were used by Russians before the detonation of Kakhovka hydropower plant dam. Also, according to the local citizens, Russian forces have been leaving the region in large numbers and at a high speed, which could be a sign of another terrorist act. So, in regards to slow counteroffensive, everyone is worried why it's going at such a slow speed. As a military historian and analyst, I can say that all such operations where there are stationary, well prepared defense lines are very slow, and the Russians did prepare quite well. They dug trenches, laid minefields, and built bunkers. Let's recall the campaign in Italy during the Second World War II. Unfortunately, it took 2 years, but it was because the Allies tried to balance losses and gains. In the end, they managed to break through the fortified defense, so don't expect everything to happen that quickly. As for difficulties, currently the two main difficulties for the armed forces are electronic warfare, which limit the operation of Ukraine drones and somewhat complicate accuracy in aviation. People who were recently at the front lines said that the Russian helicopters are causing a lot of damage, but these are tactical issues that can be resolved. Landmines and other obstacles complicate Ukraine's counterattack against Russian forces. The Ukrainian troops have a right to proceed cautiously, said the head of the NATO Military Committee, Admiral Rob Bauer. A counteroffensive is difficult. People should not think it's a cakewalk. It will never be, he told reporters in Brussels. Ukrainian troops are facing defensive obstacles up to 30 kilometers deep as they try to break through Russian lines, Bauer said, drawing on historical comparison. If we go back to history, we saw in Normandy during World War II that it took 7, 8, 9 weeks for the Allies to break through the German defense lines. So it's not surprising that it's not happening that quickly, he added. It is wrong to form expectations in people that everything will happen quickly and everything will be released in one job. Released in one job. This will never happen or is very unlikely. Rather, it will be a progressive offensive. It's good that now Ukraine and the Western allies seem to understand the challenges and they are working to cope with them. Thank you for listening to my podcast. If you like it, please share with your friends.